Roots. Modifications and functions. Many roots of peculiar form and functions are known among angiosperms. Let us look at the various modifications of roots. We will start with the taproot modifications for storage of food. The fusiform root is the primary root that is swollen in the middle and gradually tapering towards the apex and the base. For example, radish. Napiform root is the primary root that becomes considerably swollen at the upper part. Hypocotyl. It becomes almost spherical and sharply tapering towards the lower end. For example, beet. In case of the conical root, the root is broad at the base and it gradually tapers towards the apex like a cone. For example, carrot. In case of the tuberous or tubercular root, the root becomes thick and fleshy but does not maintain any specific shape. For example, sweet potato. Then we have the branch root modification pneumatophores. Many plants growing in marshy places, especially in the tidal swamp forests, produce special roots which grow up into the air from beneath the slime and are known as pneumatophores or breathing roots. Pneumatophores arise from long horizontal roots, and as they are negatively geotropic, they grow vertically upwards, projecting several inches into the air. They often occur in large numbers around the trunk of the tree. There is a corky layer over each root which covers even the apex, and the portion in the air bears numerous lenticels. Pneumatophores form short absorbing branches from their lower portions, and their root hairs are borne on these. They are the centers of active respiration, and their vertical growth may be necessary to place the absorbing roots at the most favorable level. Examples are seen in Rhizophora, Sonoracea, Heritiara and Avicennia. Let us look at the modifications of adventitious roots for storage of food. Tuberous or tubercular roots are swollen roots without any definite shape. For example, in case of sweet potato. Fasciculated roots refer to several tubercular roots that occur in a cluster at the base of the stem. For example, in case of asparagus. The modification in which the slender root becomes suddenly swollen near the apex is known as nodules root. For example, in case of ginger. The modification in which there are some swellings at frequent intervals, the roots are termed moniliform or beaded roots. For example, in case of Momordica. When the root possesses a series of ring-like swellings on its body, it is known as an annulated root. For example, in case of Ipecacuanha. Then we have modifications of adventitious roots for mechanical support. Prop roots are those which develop from the main branches of a tree and grow straight downwards to enter the soil and form underground branch roots. For example, in case of Ficus bengalensis, the banyan tree. As the roots grow old, they increase in thickness due to secondary growth and give support to the branches, which continue their horizontal growth, producing more prop roots at intervals. Adventitious roots sometimes form supporting stilts and are thus known as stilt roots. For example, in case of Pandanus. The maize plant has a tall, slender stem. It develops a cluster of roots from the first one or two nodes above ground level, which grow obliquely downwards into the soil and give added support to the stem. Some tropical climbers like piper beetle produce roots from their nodes and internodes, by means of which such plants attach themselves to their support and climb it. These roots cling closely to the bark of the supporting tree. To ensure a foothold, such roots secrete a kind of sticky juice which quickly dries up in the air, as seen in Hedera helix. In Hedera, adventitious roots are formed in great numbers on the side of the stem next to the support. They attach themselves to the support by the formation of mucilage from the surface cells of the apex. Often the roots form at their apex a disc-like structure or a sort of claw for a firm foothold, and hence are also called clinging roots. Let us look at the modifications of adventitious roots for vital functions. Parasites among the flowering plants make use of modified roots as a means of penetrating the tissues of the host plant. In Orobanche, the primary root of the seedling bears no root cap and is the only root formed by the parasite, serving only for fresh attachments and modified roots. Cuscuta has only a temporary root in the seedling state. The stem of Cuscuta twines around the stem of the host and obtains its nourishment by means of numerous penetrating suckers which spring from the surface of its stem nearest to the host. Such sucking roots are known as haustoria. In some aquatic plants, the floating branches develop a kind of adventitious roots which are soft, light, spongy and colorless, and are known as respiratory roots. They usually develop above the level of water and serve to store up air. Such roots facilitate respiration. This is also seen in the case of the plant Jasaya. Epiphytic roots are aerial and hang freely in the air. Each hanging root is surrounded by a spongy tissue known as velamen, which absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. Such roots do not absorb any food from the supporting plant. For example, in case of vanda, a common orchid. In some plants, the aerial adventitious roots form chlorophyll in them and become assimilatory in function and are hence known as assimilatory roots. They synthesize food by photosynthesis. A common example is Ctenospora. Let us now study the important functions of the root. Fixation is a mechanical function where the main root goes deep into the soil and the lateral roots spread out in different directions, and the root system as a whole firmly anchors the plant. In monocots, this is done by the fibrous roots. The absorption of water and minerals from the soil is done with the help of root hairs which develop in a cluster at a little distance behind the root apex. These root hairs adhere to the soil particles and absorb water and soluble mineral salts from them. The root is also concerned with the conduction of water and mineral salts, thereby sending them upwards into the stem and the leaves. There is a certain amount of food stored up in the root, usually in its mature region. As the root grows further, the stored food is utilized. On the branches of Ctenospora, long slender hanging roots develop, which form chlorophyll in them and turn green in color. These roots are assimilatory in function. Hygroscopic roots are found in epiphytic orchids, for example in vanda. They absorb moisture directly from the atmosphere. In most of the genera of Papilionaceae, Fabaceae, for example, soya bean, the symbiotic root nodules are present. They contain the nitrogen-fixing bacteria and help in fixing atmospheric nitrogen in the soil to increase its fertility. The assimilatory roots are green and prepare food via photosynthesis. Such roots are commonly found in Ctenospora. Some roots help in vegetative propagation, for example, in case of sweet potato. The pneumatophores of mangrove vegetation are negatively geotropic and possess lenticels on them for exchange of gases. Roots of several plants develop mutually beneficial partnership with some fungal hyphae to form mycorrhiza. Thus the root, performing innumerable functions, is the lifeblood of all vegetation.